On the Living in Southern Maryland podcast today, I had a great talk with Eric Jackson at Bay Fiber Studio. We talked about all types of stuff like his 100 Shore project and also how he's going to be opening up his own studio in downtown Leonardtown. That's going to be opening mid-July. So make sure you give the podcast a full listen so you can really understand what's going on with Eric and Bay Fiber Studio. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. My name is Rob Schou with Living in Southern Maryland, and today I have Eric Jackson of Bay Fiber Studio with me. Eric, it's great to have you on here.
Thanks, Rob. Good to be on the podcast, man.
So, Eric, we've known each other for a while now, but you've really started to make a name for yourself, especially in Southern Maryland and beyond, as an artist. And I wanted to give you the platform to go ahead and kind of give us an overview of what you've been doing, as an artist in this area.
Yeah, I am. Well, thanks again. I am a wildlife illustrator. I label myself as, but it's a very unique style of wildlife illustration that I create. I'm also technically what's called a fiber artist. I use a method that is really unique it's a wax resist method. So I'm actually painting with melted wax to create each of the illustrations that I make. And so they come out with this really unique aesthetic to them, but they're still really importantly true to the actual physical characteristics of each of the species that I'm trying to depict. And all the wildlife is centered around Chesapeake Bay, flora and fauna, mostly birds and fish, sea life and waterfowl is where I get most of my inspiration. So spend a lot of time out on the water fishing, hunting, and I get to combine that hobby with the art making hobby to make pictures of the things that I find out there on the Chesapeake.
So like one of the coolest things, and it kind of ties into this, one of the coolest things that I know about you is that last year you started a project that kind of ties into the flora, the fauna, and the Chesapeake Bay. And it's called the 100 Shores Project. And I know you're continuing it now. Can you give us a little more information about what that is and how that all ties in with your art?
Yeah, 100 Shores was an adventure in a single word. It's 100shores.com. You can check it out online, is where everything is housed. It started as a journey to visit 100 different shorelines or locations that are within the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and then using water samples from each of those shorelines to create t-shirts of all things that depicted the map of the entire watershed while dyeing the shirt. So each shirt is dyed using water that came from each of those shorelines. So there's 100 different shores, 100 different water samples, and then it ended up being a lot more than 100 shirts because it kind of took off. Each one has the same design, but tells its own little story about where it came from. So it was this big story about journeys and also like an interconnectedness of the waterways, all the rivers and streams that eventually flow out into the main stem and into the ocean.
I think one of the craziest thing is it wasn't just about the shirts or the art itself or the dyeing. It was about the blog posts too. Like I read a lot of your newsletters and blog posts about that. And I think one of the coolest parts was the history behind each one of those spots. Was that kind of the goal, to kind of tell the history? And
that was my favorite part. Yeah, to be honest, like making the shirts became very much grunt work, but telling the stories, crafting these stories, like in the tradition of like Tom Horton, telling these kind of long form stories about the Chesapeake, like across the watershed, was really what kept me going, especially like in the thick of it when it was, in the 70s and 80s of the shorelines, and like, man, this is a lot. And like, you just keep going because there was this, this allure of all these different places to travel to. I think one of the things that I really knew from the onset is that as people that are, supporters and champions of the Chesapeake Bay watershed, like we are still all very like familiar with certain kind of microcosms of the watershed. Like I know the Potomac extremely well, up to like the 301 bridge. I know the
Yep.
Patuxent very well, like the mouth of the Patuxent. But then once you go like up into different rivers, like it's like a different, it's an interconnectedness story, but it's all very, much a journey to find new places to go.
That does sound cool. And like, so when you were out there, did you get a whole bunch of inspiration of different artwork to do while you were going around? Was it kind of a dual purpose trip?
One of the goals was to make it a story of access to Chesapeake, access to the watershed, which really for me meant focusing on places that you could get to on the shore, not having to depart out into the middle of the bay to go rock fishing or something like that, but places that you could access just by walking, riding your bike, pulling up to a shoreline, and what could you experience by actually still being. But I still so I would take my fishing gear as well and see what I could fish from the shore and see, like freshwater fishing and stuff, bank fishing, that kind of thing, to get some inspiration for artworks that I would then also, like the larger artworks that I would do in addition to the shirts. So yeah, it was definitely a kill two birds with one stone, catch two fish with one bottom rig or something like that.
Was it hard to find access points? I know that in some counties
it
can be
was.
tough to find shoreline points.
I'm not going to call any counties out, but some counties are much better than others. Eastern Shore does a great job, from what I've found, of providing access points, parks, boat ramps, just shoreline areas. But that really became the overarching theme. So everything was kind of separated out into, this is a shoreline that connects to history, or this is a shoreline that really connects to wildlife. There's a spawn run that happens on this river. But the theme for the entire thing became about access. Where can you go? How can you make people aware of places that they are connected to that aren't too far away from them and they can enjoy? Because it's tough. The statistic is like 98% of the shoreline in the Chesapeake Bay is privately owned, which is absurd to think about.
That's absolutely crazy. Like, that's wild. I never knew. I knew it was high, but didn't know it was that much. That's
I wish
crazy.
I could quote where I got. I mean, that it's a well quoted statistic, and I can't remember exactly. I think it's Chesapeake Conservancy, if I remember right, says, quotes that number. But it's intense, 98%. And some counties that there may be one or two like public access points within the entire county that you could get to the.
And I know I grew up in Anne Arundel County, so I know that access, especially on the Severn River, South River had a few places, but even on the Severn River or even on the South River, it's tough to find anything to get out of that.
From what I found, it was area. Like going north, it was like South River was better than Severn River. It was better than Magothy River. Magothy River was a nightmare. I mean, there's one park on the very like northern end of the Magothy River, the mouth or the foot end of the river that I managed to get to, and it was not easy to get to either. Yeah.
So then what's next for 100 Shores? I know this was all last year that you did this stuff. What's kind of the next?
It was popular enough. It was successful enough. Got some outside funding for the project to keep it going. And so this year, the 100 Shores is going to continue to live on as a brand, for lack of a better word, as a idea. But 100 was kind of like the kickoff. And this year, we're not going to do 100 of them. We're going to kind of narrow it down. I mentioned themes that were recurring throughout the original version of it. And so this year, we're just going to focus on themes of landmarks. And so we're starting out by visiting lighthouses, kind of a popular sort of, everybody has sort of like a heartfelt connection to this idea of landmarks in certain areas of the Chesapeake. And so we're going to start by visiting from north to south, some of the most popular lighthouses, from Havre de Grace down to Cape Charles, Virginia.
So if someone wants to follow this, they can basically just go to the 100 Shores website and kind of follow you through your newsletter or through kind of stuff like that, or social media.
Yep.
at times?
100shores.com. The newsletter is the best place to get the blog post sent to you. It just works better. If you're interested in, sitting on the couch with a beer on a Friday evening, reading a story about the Chesapeake Bay, that's the best way that I've found to deliver them. I do occasionally post them as well to different social media channels, but go to 100shores.com and just hop on the email list. I think you get a coupon for a shirt too.
So like, I know that this took up a lot of last year's time and some art shows too, but this year you got something else going on. You got a studio that you're opening up in downtown Leonardtown that I'm sure some of those shirts will be there too, but all your artwork is going to be there along with some other stuff. You want to give me a little bit more information about what's going on in the studio?
Yeah, downtown Leonardtown, Southern Maryland's art and entertainment district, it's a happening place. If people haven't been, it's definitely worth coming in for at least an afternoon and an evening to see what's happening on one of the weekends in town. And part of the town's arts and entertainment theme is now Bay Fiber Studio. I just in May signed a lease for a studio right in downtown for a number of different reasons, partly out of necessity. I work rather large on a lot of my artworks, and I had outgrown my home basement studio, which served me very well for 9 years, but it was time to move up in the world into something that really I could craft to fit the needs of my craft. And so it's a perfect size, really big open space studio with lots of room for my larger artworks, lots of wall space to hang my artworks as a gallery for people to come and see, hopefully take home with them. And also it's going to be a workshop space. Leonardtown is one of the most happening things about it is it offers a lot of kind of workshop, DIY, paint night sort of things for folks that are looking for something to do on a night out or a girls' night or something like that. And the methods that I use in my work lend themselves very well to that sort of like DIY, make and take, crafting kind of vibe. So I'm pretty excited to, starting in July, start offering 1-day workshops, 1-hour workshops, and then multi-day workshops for people that are interested in really diving in and getting a little messy with the same sort of techniques that I use in my artworks. So,
and it's way different than other art forms or art media that I've seen out there. It seems like it would be, a break from the normal paint by numbers kind of stuff. It really produces a really cool product and a really cool, finished piece.
Yeah, it's a very bright, vibrant art form that's very different. Again, we're using a wax method, so you're painting with a melted wax. But it's wearable art as well, and so there's kind of the draw of being able to create something that you're not just going to like stick in the corner of your house and say I made that. It's something that you'll be able to wear and share and give as a gift, or come back and do a second one and do your whole wardrobe from the studio. So that's the neat things about it, is being able to change the method in which people are creating here in town.
That's pretty smart, because then it's not like you'd have repeat people coming in that want a different shirt, maybe a different theme that you're doing or something like that.
Right.
I know that we talked about this before off camera, but I know the Duck is coming to downtown Leonardtown. Are you thinking about doing a Duck?
Yeah, the big Duck. I've started to just scratch the surface on ideas that I might put together for the Duck. I think it would lend itself to a good 100 Shore story. As well as some shirts that somehow show some big rubber ducks. But beyond that, I'm still thinking of ways to make it some sort of fun workshop that people could do. Come home with something that's unique to that time.
If someone that's listening doesn't know, there's a huge rubber duck that's going to be coming to downtown Leonardtown, I think August 4th and 5th. And when I mean huge, it's not just like, the size of a car.
The world's largest.
The world's largest rubber duck. I believe it's overseas right now, and it's going to be coming over. It's almost like, I've read it, it's almost like the Macy Day Parade kind of floats. It's made out of that similar material. So you'll have to go down and check that out and check out Eric too. If someone came, can they also see you making the artwork? Like, are you going to be in there creating and it's going to be open during that time? Or is that something that's going to be your
Yeah,
private time?
I have I have my own studio hours, so when it's not being used for classroom space, it's being used as my studio space. So, when I'm not there leading workshops or helping other folks, you'll still be able to see pieces that are in progress, that I'm working on, some of the larger pieces, which is, I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to arrange all that so people can, I can work around people and they can work around me, but it's big enough that it shouldn't be an issue. The work that I do we probably won't be doing the exact same sort of style that I work in, proprietary secrets and things of my work. But it's the same basic materials and same basic methods that we'll be using.
That's awesome. I think that's one thing that I know I've seen, like the different, social media posts of how you do it. I know that's one thing I would want to see, up close and personal, of like how it's actually done, at least, because it's one of those things that's just neat to watch. And then of course we got to take one of the classes and get a shirt too, And so that's going to be opened up around mid-July, beginning of July, right?
So aiming for a grand opening of the first week of July.
Okay.
Is the goal.
And so what we'll do is we'll put everything down in like the description and notes and stuff like that, of course. And we'll make sure that anyone's listening that wants to go and we'll put everything down in like the description and notes and stuff like that, of course. And we'll make sure that anyone's listening that wants to go and check you out has all your like address information and everything like that too. But I mean, you're literally right off the downtown square. It's not hard to find you down there.
Yeah. Leonardtown's, I mean, it's a happening place, man. We moved to Leonardtown like 12 years ago now, and I mean, we were just talking about it the other night. Like, this is going to be a different town 20 years from now. Like, they're really putting a lot of work into making the town a vibrant destination in itself. And my studio is kind of like in a really cool, like, we've got all these little districts now. Like, so my studio is in what's called the Leonardtown Alley district.
So Eric, kind of wrapping things up, where's the best place for people to find out more about your work, maybe purchase some of your artwork? What's the best place to do that?
So 3 things you can do. You could, if you're online, you can go to bayfibersstudio.com to see my own work, the wildlife illustrations that I do. If you're interested in the 100 Shores project, you can go to 100shores.com. That's written out 100, not the number 100. So 100 all long form. 100shores.com. And then the third thing is in person. You can 41660 Park Avenue, Leonardtown, Maryland is the studio address. And I think I have claimed the space on Google. So hopefully it comes up if you Google the address, but I haven't actually tried that. So if it doesn't, it could be pretty soon.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on today, and all that information will be down in the show notes too for anyone to check you out.